Nearby, Aulus Umbricius Scaurus is no longer thinking about profit. The amphorae, the accounts, the carefully negotiated deals that once seemed so important now feel absurdly small. His workers stand frozen, looking to him for answers. But answers have become a luxury Pompeii no longer possesses. He opens his mouth to speak, pauses, then finally gives the only order that still makes sense. Go home. The words sound weak, even to him. Home. As if home remains a place capable of protecting anyone from what is now unfolding above them. Around the city, panic spreads in waves. Not a single dramatic surge, but thousands of individual realizations arriving one after another. The mountain is erupting. This is not ending. It is getting worse. Families rush through streets carrying whatever they can grab. Some take money. Others gather food. Many choose objects that comfort them rather than things that will actually help. Human beings have always been strangely loyal to sentiment during disasters. One man drags a heavy chest of documents. A woman refuses to leave without a collection of silver cups. Another spends precious minutes searching for a missing sandal while ash continues to pour from the sky. The city darkens further. What had once resembled a cloudy afternoon now feels closer to twilight. Ash accumulates on rooftops, bending wooden beams under growing weight. Every few minutes another crash echoes through the streets as part of a roof finally surrenders. Each collapse sends fresh screams racing through nearby neighborhoods. The tremors continue relentlessly. Walls crack, statues topple, fountains cease flowing altogether. Even the ground seems exhausted by what is happening above it. Marcus Lucretius abandons his bakery. The ovens still burn behind him, forgotten. Fresh loaves remain inside, baking for customers who will never return. For a brief moment, he looks back at the building he has spent years building his life around. Then, another tremor shakes the street, and the decision is made for him. He joins the crowd moving toward the city gates. Thousands now flow through Pompeii's streets like rivers searching desperately for escape. Some move with purpose. Others wander in circles, overwhelmed by fear and uncertainty. Parents grip children's hands so tightly it hurts. Friends call each other's names through the growing darkness. Neighbors who have lived beside one another for decades suddenly disappear into the confusion. Above them all, Mount Vesuvius continues without mercy. The eruption column rises higher and wider, feeding on unimaginable forces deep beneath the earth. Lightning flickers inside the ash cloud, brief flashes of white illuminating the darkness from within. It is beautiful in the same terrible way a hurricane or wildfire can be beautiful. Nature displaying power without concern for the lives caught beneath it. Soon stones begin falling alongside the ash, small at first, then larger. Pumice rocks rain from the sky, bouncing across rooftops and streets. People raise arms over their heads instinctively. Some are struck, others stumble. Every minute outside becomes more dangerous than the one before. Yet staying indoors now carries its own risks. There are no good choices left, only different forms of danger. And as darkness settles over Pompeii in the middle of the day, the city finally understands a truth it has spent hours avoiding. This is not a disaster that will pass. This is the end of the world they know. And the mountain is only getting started. Darkness arrives long before sunset. Not the gentle darkness of evening, but something heavier, stranger, and far more unsettling. The ash cloud above Pompeii has grown so vast that it swallows the sun completely. What little light remains filters through layers of ash and smoke, turning the world into a dim gray nightmare where familiar streets suddenly look foreign. People stumble through roads they have walked their entire lives, struggling to recognize landmarks hidden beneath falling debris. The city gates are overwhelmed. Thousands push toward every possible exit, creating bottlenecks of fear and confusion. Some families become separated in the crush. Children cry out for parents they can no longer see. Husbands shout for wives whose voices vanish beneath the roar of the eruption. Every direction seems dangerous, yet standing still feels even worse. The human mind desperately searches for certainty, but certainty has abandoned Pompeii entirely. Marcus Lucretius fights his way through the crowd with a cloth wrapped around his mouth. Breathing has become difficult. Each inhale carries fine particles of ash deep into his lungs. His eyes burn constantly. Around him, people cough and stumble, leaving footprints in layers of gray dust that now cover everything. Roof tiles, market stalls, fountains, statues, gardens. The city is slowly disappearing beneath a blanket of volcanic debris. Near the Forum, Flavia Sabina pauses beneath the shelter of a stone archway. Her jewelry box is still clutched tightly against her chest. Hours ago, it represented wealth and security. Now it feels ridiculous. The gold inside cannot stop the ash. It cannot clear the air. It cannot guide her family to safety. Yet she refuses to abandon it. Not because it has practical value anymore, but because letting go would mean accepting how completely life has changed. The tremors worsen. Buildings groan with every movement of the earth. Across Pompeii, cracks spread through walls like spider webs. Entire sections of houses begin collapsing under the growing weight accumulating on rooftops. The sound becomes terrifyingly common. A deep crack, a shower of stone, then screams. In one neighborhood, a family huddles together beneath a table as their home shakes violently around them. Dust falls from the ceiling. Pottery shatters against the floor. Outside, neighbors rush past carrying blankets, food sacks, and frightened children. Nobody knows where safety actually exists anymore. They simply move because movement feels better than waiting. The animals are almost gone now. Horses have broken loose from their stables. Dogs run through the streets without owners. Birds vanished from the sky hours ago. The city belongs to panic and ash. Meanwhile, Mount Vesuvius continues its relentless assault. The eruption column rises nearly impossible distances into the atmosphere. From its towering heights, more pumice rains downward in endless waves. Some pieces are small enough to ignore. Others strike with enough force to injure or kill. Every rooftop becomes a trap. Every open street becomes a gamble. Aulus Umbricius Scaurus finally abandons his warehouse. The business that once defined his status is buried beneath layers of ash. Workers who spent years under his employment have scattered in every direction. Wealth, reputation, influence, all the invisible structures of society are collapsing as quickly as the buildings themselves. Disaster has a way of reducing everyone to the same basic goal: survive. As evening should be approaching, the darkness grows even deeper. Lamps and torches appear throughout the city, flickering points of light swallowed by swirling clouds of ash. Their glow reveals frightened faces coated gray. It reveals abandoned carts, overturned market stalls, and roads becoming increasingly difficult to travel. Some people choose to remain inside their homes. Thick walls feel safer than exposed streets. They close doors and windows. They gather supplies. They pray. Many believe the eruption must eventually stop. Surely no disaster can continue forever. Others continue fleeing toward the countryside, hoping distance will save them. Long lines of refugees move through darkness, illuminated only by lightning flashing inside the volcanic cloud overhead. Every flash briefly reveals hundreds of terrified figures walking through ash-covered roads before darkness swallows them again. Then a new sound emerges. At first it is distant, almost impossible to distinguish from the constant roar already filling the air. But gradually it becomes clearer, deeper, more threatening, a sound like a giant exhaling. Far above Pompeii, the eruption column is beginning to change. For hours it has risen steadily into the sky. But now parts of it seem unstable. Massive sections churn and fold inward. The towering cloud no longer looks permanent. It looks strained. Nobody in Pompeii understands what this means. Nobody knows that something far worse than falling ash is approaching. The people still inside the city focus on immediate dangers. The collapsing roofs, the choke in air, the endless darkness. They cannot imagine that the mountain has not yet unleashed its deadliest weapon. And somewhere beyond the city walls, hidden within clouds of ash and smoke, the first deadly pyroclastic surge begins forming. Fast, hot, unstoppable, moving silently toward Pompeii, while thousands of people below continue searching for safety that no longer exists. The night has become something unnatural. Pompeii no longer feels like a city, but like a shadow of one, buried beneath layers of ash and fear. The streets that only hours ago echoed with merchants, laughter, arguments, and the ordinary noise of daily life now carry a different sound entirely. Coughing, crying, prayers, footsteps moving through darkness with no clear destination. Every breath feels heavier than the last. Ash covers everything now. It settles on rooftops, piles against doorways, fills courtyards, and drifts through cracks in walls. People brush it away constantly, only to watch more fall moments later. The effort has become pointless, but they continue anyway because small actions provide the illusion of control. Marcus Lucretius keeps moving through the crowded streets, one hand covering his mouth while the other reaches forward into darkness. The city around him has become difficult to recognize. Familiar buildings appear distorted beneath layers of gray. Statues resemble silent ghosts. The air tastes of stone and sulfur. Every few moments another tremor shakes the ground, forcing people to stop and steady themselves before continuing. Nearby, a family huddles beneath an archway. The father tries to reassure his children that everything will be fine, though his voice betrays him. The children believe him because children often trust confidence more than truth. The mother says nothing. She watches the sky and understands that whatever happens next is beyond anyone's ability to control. Across Pompeii, thousands are making similar calculations. Stay or leave, run or hide, carry possessions or abandon them. Every choice feels important, yet none of them seem capable of changing the outcome. Some people still refuse to leave their homes. The walls are thick. The doors are strong. Surely shelter is safer than chaos. They gather in interior rooms surrounded by family and familiar objects. They light lamps. They pray to gods who have suddenly become very important. Others continue toward the city gates, joining endless streams of frightened citizens moving through darkness illuminated only by flickering torches and occasional flashes of volcanic lightning. Above them, Mount Vesuvius continues to dominate the sky. The eruption column twists and churns like a living thing. Strange flashes pulse within it. Thunder rolls through clouds made not of rain, but of ash. Every new sound from the mountain feels larger than the one before. Every vibration through the ground seems stronger. Yet the worst part is uncertainty. Nobody knows how long this will last. Nobody knows whether conditions are improving or worsening. Human beings can endure extraordinary hardship when they understand its limits. Pompeii has no limits to measure, only fear and waiting. The ash now falls so heavily that many rooftops begin collapsing entirely. One house survives for hours before finally giving way with a tremendous crash. The noise echoes through nearby streets. Neighbors rush toward the sound instinctively, then stop. There is nothing they can do. Another collapse follows somewhere else, then another. The city seems to be slowly crushing itself beneath the weight accumulating from above. Flavia Sabina has long since stopped caring about the jewelry box she carried earlier. It remains tucked beneath her arm out of habit rather than intention. Survival has reduced life to simpler priorities: air, shelter, family. Everything else feels distant and strangely unimportant. Around her, people move like shadows through the ash-covered darkness. Some are coated so completely in gray that they resemble statues more than living human beings. Their faces are difficult to recognize. Their voices sound muffled through cloth coverings and exhausted lungs. Somewhere nearby, a child asks when the sun will return. No one answers. The question hangs in the darkness unanswered because nobody knows. Hours pass, or perhaps minutes. Time itself feels unreliable now. Without sunlight, without normal routines, without anything familiar to measure against, the city drifts through a nightmare where every moment resembles the one before it. Then the mountain changes again. Far above Pompeii, the eruption column begins collapsing inward. The enormous tower of ash and gas that has dominated the sky all day can no longer support itself. Massive sections break apart and tumble downward. Nobody in the city understands the significance immediately. From ground level, it simply appears as another frightening development in a day filled with frightening developments. But high on the slopes of Vesuvius, something deadly has begun moving. A pyroclastic surge. A superheated avalanche of gas, ash, rock fragments, and destruction. It races down the mountain at terrifying speed, faster than a horse can run, faster than any human can hope to escape. Entire forests disappear beneath it. Trees snap and ignite. Fields vanish. Roads are erased. The surge does not move like water or wind. It moves like catastrophe given physical form. Yet inside Pompeii, most people remain unaware. They focus on the dangers they can already see: the falling ash, the collapsing roofs, the darkness. Human beings are remarkably poor at fearing threats they cannot yet observe. Marcus pauses beside a crowded intersection. Around him, dozens of people argue about what to do next. Some want to continue fleeing. Others believe they should seek stronger shelter. Nobody agrees. Nobody knows. The city has reached the stage of disaster where information becomes almost worthless because certainty no longer exists. Suddenly, another tremor strikes, stronger than anything before. Buildings groan. Loose stones crash into streets. A section of wall collapses nearby, sending people scrambling away in panic. Screams rise briefly before being swallowed by the roar of the volcano. Marcus looks toward the mountain. Even through darkness and ash, he can sense something changing. The sky itself seems to pulse. The air feels hotter, not dramatically, just enough to trigger instincts older than reason. Around the city, animals that remain become increasingly frantic. Horses rear against restraints. Dogs whine and pull desperately at leashes. Birds that had sheltered in buildings suddenly take flight into darkness despite the ash. Nature often recognizes danger before humanity does. Unfortunately, nature rarely explains itself. The first pyroclastic surge reaches the outskirts of Pompeii. It arrives with astonishing speed. Those closest to the city walls witness something impossible, a dark wall racing through darkness, a cloud moving with purpose. Before warnings can spread, before understanding can form, the surge crashes into parts of the city. Superheated gases flood streets and buildings. Temperatures soar instantly. Air itself becomes lethal. Many victims never understand what has happened. One moment they are running, hiding, praying, searching. The next moment, everything ends. Deeper inside Pompeii, confusion reigns. A blast of hot air sweeps through neighborhoods. Windows shatter, doors slam open. People stagger as sudden heat washes over them. The city that has endured hours of disaster now faces something entirely different, something faster, something final. Flavia feels the temperature rise almost immediately. Her first thought is that another building has caught fire nearby. Then she sees people running in directions that make no sense. She hears screams unlike any she has heard before. Pure terror. Not fear of uncertainty, but fear of something seen directly. The crowd begins moving again, faster now. Panic spreads through streets, already drowning in confusion. People push past one another. Families become separated. Possessions are dropped and abandoned. Nobody cares about wealth anymore. Nobody cares about status. The mountain has stripped away every social distinction. There are only human beings trying desperately to survive. Another surge follows the first, then another, each one larger, each one more destructive. Entire sections of Pompeii disappear beneath waves of ash and scorching gas. Roofs collapse, streets vanish. Landmarks that stood for generations are erased within minutes. The city is no longer dying slowly. It is being overwhelmed. Marcus runs without direction. Around him, visibility drops almost to nothing. The darkness becomes absolute. Ash swirls through the air so densely that breathing feels impossible. Every instinct screams to keep moving, even though movement no longer guarantees safety. Somewhere nearby, a building collapses with a roar that sounds almost identical to thunder. Somewhere else, people call out names that receive no answer. The world has narrowed to fragments: heat, darkness, noise, fear. Above all of it stands Mount Vesuvius, no longer pretending to be harmless. The mountain that watched silently over Pompeii for generations has finally revealed itself. Not as a guardian, not as a landmark, but as a force of nature entirely indifferent to the lives built in its shadow. And as another deadly surge races toward the heart of the city, Pompeii enters its final hours. By now, Pompeii is no longer a city trying to survive. It is a city being erased. The streets that once carried merchants, travelers, children, and gossip are buried beneath layers of ash so deep that many roads have disappeared entirely. Buildings stand only as dark shapes in the gloom, some already collapsed, others waiting their turn. The familiar rhythm of daily life is gone. No bargaining in the forum, no laughter from courtyards, no smell of fresh bread drifting from ovens, only darkness, falling ash, and the endless roar of Vesuvius. The people who remain are exhausted beyond fear. Hours of confusion, choking air, collapsing roofs, and constant tremors have worn away panic itself. What remains is something quieter, a desperate determination to stay with loved ones. Mothers hold children close. Husbands search for wives. Friends refuse to leave one another behind even when every instinct tells them to run. In the face of disaster, the things that seemed important that morning have become meaningless. Wealth means nothing. Status means nothing. Politics, business, property, arguments, ambitions, all of it has been reduced to dust before the city itself. Marcus Lucretius can barely see anymore. Ash covers his hair, his clothing, his skin. Every breath burns. Every step feels heavier than the last. Somewhere along the way, he stopped thinking about escape. The roads are gone. The landmarks are gone. Even the sky has disappeared. There is only darkness above and ash below. Around him, other figures move like ghosts through the gloom. Silent silhouettes wandering through the remains of a world they no longer recognize. The final pyroclastic surge descends from the mountain with overwhelming force.